welcome to this stakeholders meeting. This meeting was actually an add-on to the original agenda so that we could have some more listening sessions. The original listening session that was held, when I say listening session, to take comments and to hear from the public, for the stakeholders to hear from the public. Originally, that meeting did not have many, or any, I should say, people log on. So we had added a couple of meetings from the original agenda. We added February 17th. We added today, March 3rd, as another listening session. So I think maybe I should take attendance. If I have a list here of who I believe is here, and if I miss somebody, please let me know. I have Trustee Joe McLaughlin, co-chair. I have Reverend Donald Butler. I have Miss Willa Bernstein. I have ADA, ADA Brendan Ahern. I have Dan Russo. We have a note here that Willie Jenkins was not available. We have Isabella Sepulveda. We have Police Chief Tom Cummings. We have myself, Village Attorney Ken Gray. We have Father Michael Vetrano. We have Holbert Waldrop. Thank you. We have May Zagarelli. Mike Horstman from the PBA.
Horstman.
What is it? Horstman?
Horstman.
Horstman, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And Sandra Dozier. Okay. Is there anybody on the call that I missed? Okay, great. So, like I said, this is a listening session for the public. Obviously, we're out there on YouTube. Hopefully, people are watching. And if they want to comment and give input for the stakeholders committee to take into consideration, now is another opportunity for that to happen. I believe this would be the third listening session that this committee has held. So Kat, please tell me that somebody is in the waiting room to get in.
No, sir, I apologize. There are no attendees.
Well, that's no need for you to apologize.
Right.
Does anybody on the committee have any suggestions or comments about the fact that we have a lack of, I guess, community input?
Yeah.
No?
I guess my question is, how are we advertising to the public that they have, the dates and the times and how they would get on these calls so that they could participate or discuss anything that they were interested in discussing?
I'm going to tell you, I don't know the answer to that question. Kat, would you know the answer to that?
Miranda sends out notices, but I'm not sure what she does. So I can ask her right now while we're chatting, okay?
That'd be great.
All right.
Mr. Gray, I would like to comment if possible.
Yeah, sure.
I think the actual Southampton Village residents support their local police department. And as the third time that we haven't had any listeners, maybe it's a sign that they actually do support the local police department and think we're actually doing a good job in our community. Thank you.
I think they don't know about it. They don't know about it. We should put it on Facebook, Twitter.
I have a lot of people in the community reaching out.
Instagram, everywhere.
I'm sorry, Michael, what were you saying?
A lot of people in the community are aware of it. A lot of them have mentioned it to me. Again, I just think it's, people think the police department and the police department's administration is doing a good job. We serve the community well, all officers. And, this is something we will continue to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. That is altogether possible for the reason.
I've got to just jump in, Ken, sorry for 1 second, because I just, with all due respect, I think everybody here respects the police department and the job they do in protecting the public. And, you know, in terms of volunteering our time and being stakeholders in the community and living in the community and caring deeply about the community that we are part of, I think bettering the, you know, systems and making them more available to the public to know what's going on and making things transparent is exactly the way to support the police department. So I just have to say that I'm in serious disagreement with that statement, because support is about improving and evolving, and the way you care about it, the police department, is to make sure it evolves with the times.
I have an answer for you, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bernstein. Kat, what do you?
I just called Miranda and she said that it's noticed in the paper through the clerk's office. She said 2 places. And on the village website.
Okay, all right. Just trying to think. I don't think we have another listening session set up.
Can I just, I need to address something real quick. One, I'm a stakeholder and I had no idea this is a listening session because we haven't had many substantial meetings. So if I don't know, if I'm confused by it, I am sure the public is also confused by it. I would also like to know from Mr. Horstman, did he go to the Hill or the reservation or the laundries and speak to Latinos? Like, I'm confused by that statement. I just want to clarify that he got a full picture from the community.
Well, I mean, when everybody here is a stakeholder, everybody has, you know, their opinion from where they come from, whatever interactions they have with the public. I don't think this is necessarily a cross-examination session of Mr. Horstman. He gave his opinion. He made a statement. I don't think he necessarily needs to, you know, have a cross-examination. I think the village did a good job in this committee looking at the putting together the survey, which I think was fairly well responded to. I mean, numbers wise, I think we got pretty good feedback, did we not?
You have a hand up when you have a minute.
Oh, okay. Anybody who has a hand up?
It's Mr. Waldrop.
I will speak. Hi, I'm not a resident of the village, but I have a business in the village. It's called the Art Warehouse. And I don't have an opinion. I have an experience. While driving on a Sunday morning with me and my wife, who happens to be Jewish, I was pulled over near the reservation and I was asked, where am I going? Not told why I was pulled over.
Wow.
Not hello, how are you? The first sentence was, where are you going? Growing up in segregated Chicago, where it was very hard for women and minorities to be on the fire department, to be on the police department, a postal worker was acceptable. But growing up in Chicago, in segregated neighborhoods, you were always pulled over and asked, where are you going? When I was pulled over, I told the officer, where I was going. I'm going on a delivery at 11 o'clock in the morning. There's a sign on the van. There are windows on the van. There are paintings in the van. I have a small window. Why did you pull me over? The officer who pulled me over still persisted with the questions. So how do you do business? Where do you get your business? Why does your driver's license say Woodstock, New York? Okay. I'm a very busy person, but I take time out of my day to participate in this meeting. And if you've been listening to public radio and NPR, they've had a long segment this week about the hiring practices of civil employees on Long Island. I did not make a complaint because I didn't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. I don't know how business is done. I don't know who's a friend and who's a foe, who's a frenemy. I'm not sure. I just have a business. I come to do business, and hopefully I can make it home. And if I have an interaction with a police officer, hopefully it will be a pleasant one. But to be asked, where are you going? By the way, I was not issued any citation, was not speeding. He said he could see from maybe a half a block away that my registration my safety inspection had expired. He said he could see that, a good 50 yards away. So that's my experience, not my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask one question or two questions? When did this happen? How long ago?
A month ago.
Okay, was it in the month of January? Was it in the month of January by any chance?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay, listen, I don't know who pulled you over. I don't know what his excuse was for asking you where you were going. But I just want to share this with you. I personally had experience. I was upstate on Route 28 in the Bel Air section, up by the Bel Air ski mountain a few years ago. And it was in January. And I was driving 40 miles an hour. State trooper was driving 40 miles an hour going the other direction. As he passed me, he did a U-turn, came back and pulled me over. And I said, okay. I said, officer, trooper, sir, how can I help you? And he said, your inspection is expired. I said, you picked that up. I'm going 40 miles an hour and you're going 40 miles an hour other way. And you were able to tell my inspection was expired. He said, it's a different color. They changed color in January. So I knew yours was expired for more than 12 months. And that's how I knew it was expired. I'm not making excuses for anybody. I'm just sharing, as you did, a personal experience.
And the officer persisted and wanted to know, how do you get your customers and your address on your license plate? He persisted with the questions. And I'm sorry, he wasn't Mr. Friendly. Maybe it's standard practice, but the officer was not Mr. Friendly. He was not even Mr. Polite.
Understood. And I was not defending his actions. I was just trying to give you a personal experience because I was mystified at how somebody noticed my registration expired from a distance as well. But so you made a comment, and if you want to share some more, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. One of the things that we're looking at here is to improve a complaint procedure so that you feel comfortable, not you, any member of the residents or anybody who visits the community would feel comfortable. We have a procedure. We're gonna hopefully make a recommendation to put it in procedure that you don't file a complaint with the police department.
There you go.
Right. Okay, so.
I don't want to see Mr. Friendly in this life or the next one, and I don't want to see Mr. Friendly's friends to complain about Mr. Friendly, Mr. Unfriendly.
Understood.
We have three hands up when you have a minute.
Thank you for sharing. Next hand.
Jesse Warren Mayor has his hand up first, I think.
Mr. Mayor, how are you, sir?
How you doing, Ken? So I'm just wanted to jump in here. Hopefully my connectivity is okay. If not, please forgive me. I just wanted to jump in. I'm obviously not one of the two elected officials on this stakeholder group, but we have put together a great group of stakeholders, and I wanted to thank everybody for participating. As Reverend Butler pointed out at the last meeting, everyone's here to volunteer. I know Reverend Butler, for example, gives up his Bible study time to be here. So I just want to make sure that we, value everybody who's here tonight, who's donated their time to the village. And what I just wanted to say is that, I think it's quite important that we have a lot of dialogue and good communication and collaboration between our stakeholders and our community members here. And what I think would be very worthwhile for the village in the short term and the long term is to have the dialogue between our stakeholders, between the elected officials who are here on and dedicating and volunteering their time for this committee, and also the chief and also other members of law enforcement and other members from the legal community who have, also spent their time here. So, Ken, I've been obviously watching this as well. And I think what's important is that we allow for more dialogue and more continuity and more discussion among our stakeholders in order to help put together a plan that our Board of Trustees can adopt that I think is fair, that both takes an input from the police and also takes an input from stakeholders. And Ken, obviously, we really appreciate your time. I know you stepped into this and you're very new to this, but I think will be more worthwhile is if we did more listening and less talking and let the stakeholders talk. And this way we can get good community input. So I'd like to maybe just kind of shift gears here from one that's maybe a bit defensive to more of just maybe listening. I think when you look at some of the, great business leaders and great political leaders and alike, you'll find that the best people do the most listening. And so I think it's really important right now to listen to our community members and take notes and make sure that these set of experiences, some are shared and some are not, get noted. And this way we can come up with a great plan to help improve the village, help improve our law enforcement community. As we've said, the survey was good, but not perfect. And so we can do better. We're on the right track. But at this point, I think, we've got a great group here. So I think it's very important to have the discussion again between, everybody here. So I also think it'd be important. I know we're kind of towards the end here, but it might be important to have a chair and someone to help lead these meetings. Reverend Butler, sorry to put you on the spot here, but you've got a great background. You're in touch with the community. You also have a law enforcement background. You're very well respected. So I think, again, sorry to put you on the spot here, but maybe you could help for the remainder of our time, lead some of these sessions. If not, it's okay. But I just wanted to give my 2 cents here and make sure that we're communicating and collaborating, versus, what's going on right now. So that's what I've got to say. I'm gonna stand down here and watch the rest of the meeting. And again, I wanted to thank everybody here. I see Reverend Butler, Sandra, Attorney Ahern. We've got our district attorney's office. We've got representative from the town, from the school, Lisa, Willa, Holbert, our Reverend Mike. We've got a lot of Pastor Mike. We've got a lot of people here, great people. Thanks to the chief and to members of our PBA. So I just again want to thank everybody, encourage everybody to collaborate, communicate, and keep this moving in a positive direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Kat, do we have somebody else with a hand up?
Yeah, ironically, Reverend Donald Butler was next. So go ahead, Reverend.
Thank you. I want to thank the mayor for his input also, because when I look at this, it's almost like if you say something, you're attacked for it. This is because we're stakeholders, because maybe we have not individually felt the injustice, but we represent people who have felt injustice. I know many of people from my congregation that are not comfortable with the police. Now I am. I have to say it up front. I am comfortable with the police. I haven't had a problem. I've said it already. I haven't had a problem with the Village of Southampton Police Department at all. Not at all. So when I speak, I'm not speaking on a personal basis. I'm speaking on people who I represent as a stakeholder. And just like Brother Waldrop just said, there really shouldn't have been a rebuttal, or not even, you didn't rebuttal, but it really shouldn't have been what happened to you, because you never have been driving while Black. So you couldn't even possibly experience driving while being Black. I mean, I spoke with the chief and the trustees. I have been stopped been stopped for being for driving while black, not in the village of Southampton, but with police. This police issue is not a village of Southampton issue. This police officer is this police issue is a national issue. And if we don't address it, then we're going to overlook it. And the last thing you want is for your stakeholders to not agree with any type of reform that's taking place.
Reverend,
last thing you want.
Reverend, I apologize. I was not being combative. I was not trying to be objectionable. I was just sharing a personal experience about the color of the, how possibly an officer would have noticed it. So if my personal experiences aren't welcome, I do apologize. And I will not, again, I was not intending to be combative. I don't think I was, but if I offended anybody, including you, Mr. Waldrop, I apologize.
Okay, we have some more hands up. I do know that Lisa had her hand up and put it down. Lisa, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more from Chief Cummings on this, because Mr. Waldrop's experience is not isolated. And I will say the same concern that he had about who's friends with who, how does the village run? Those are the things that I hear, and that's why nobody's coming forward, and that's why we only get 6 complaints a year. And I to have this dialogue, like, we need you, Chief Cummings, to talk to us and share with us, because we can't build a better community if we're not all working together. Do I think that we are behind in this process? Yes. Do I think some of this is really absurd? Honestly, I do. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I love this community. You love this community. We're all here because we want this community to do better. So I don't want it to just be the stakeholders talking at you guys. I'd really like to see this be more of a dialogue. And same with you, Joe. I would love to hear more, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to vote on whatever we put forward. So we really need this dialogue to be more of a dialogue. And please understand, and I wasn't trying to go after Mr. Horstman earlier. It's just, I know, listen, there's some wonderful officers with Southampton Village, and I would go to them in a heartbeat. And same thing with Reverend Butler. Like, we may not personally have those issues with the police, but understand that the people that we're talking to do. So I want to stop pretending that there's no problems whatsoever. And let's talk about, there might be a problem, or hey, if we have a problem, let's get to fixing it. And that's sort of where my document was going. And I'm sorry I got it to everybody late, but there's the People's Plan. Mr. Russo posted it. I was part of the group that helped write that. It is a solid document, and I'm not saying the whole thing pertains to us, but what I did was I pieced out the page numbers and the topics that we may want to look at and address and see if it's correct to implement them here. So I'm going to let you guys all decide where we're going from here, but like, we've got to get down to business, because this plan is due in 27, 28 days.
Trying to see who the next one in line is. Reverend Donald Butler, you're next in line.
Okay, since we're gonna talk, I didn't want this meeting to be a waste tonight, so that's why I'm really talking tonight. The other part to this reform is we need to hear the police side of it also. And Lisa just said that from the chief. We need to hear their side of it also, because reform would be good for them as well. We just had, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, I think it was, where I think 2 Suffolk County police officers were suspended for abusing a person that had just stolen a vehicle and kicked him in the back or pushed him in the back the way he went forward. And I believe the 2 police officers that were suspended without pay, and another police officer and a supervisor is on modified duty as a result of that. Those are things we need to talk about, because we need to know, how do police officers, and this is coming from a police point of view, how does a police officer feel comfortable even making a complaint? Not just the civilians, but how does a police officer feel comfortable doing it? Because we need police officers making complaints also, or letting the chief know when bad behavior is taking place on that side. It can't just be the public. It's got to go both ways. And I think Lisa was really saying that it needs to be comfortable for both the police to do it and also for the public to do it.
Thank you, Reverend. May Zigarelli, you're next.
Hi. I have a little different experience with the police. I am a legislative aide within the town of Southampton, so I'm always walking around town to, have a break or what have you. And there was one day that there was a homeless person, and she seemed like she was in distress and she really needed help. And I did reach out to the Southampton Village Police to see what was going on, if I could be of any assistance, because obviously, in the town, we do have certain resources or certain people we can go to ensure that person can get the help that they need. And so when I had reached out to the police, I actually received a wonderful response. They really cared about her. It seemed like they really were trying their best to figure out how to give her the resources that she needed. And I just want to point out something, because I felt that they were being very sensitive towards her situation. They were looking out for her. I just didn't know if there was something on the communication side between the actual, village government and the police. And I feel like there needs to be huge communication between the actual village and the police. I'm here as someone to help out right now, but the police also, they need people to help them out too as well when it comes to reaching out to the county, reaching out to making sure Dash is getting down there to help people who need help. And I know that Chief Cummings actually was doing that for this individual, and that was great to see. I have been in the town of Riverhead, so I've seen also, the way that they, deal with certain situations too as well. So I've seen it in the county too as well when I've worked for a different legislative district, and I just thought that they went above and beyond for her. We were able to get Dash down there. And they were making sure that they, if she moved somewhere, that we could make sure that, Dash got to her. I just wanted to bring a different angle. And I guess my hugest recommendation that I've kind of seen with experience is that the village government and the police, they have to work together. They have to assist each other if there's something that's going on with someone that really needs help. Within the village, it's also, I don't know the way the village is set up completely, but it's, someone in that government needs to help them out, whether it's a social issue or something like that. Call the county legislator up, say, I have someone, DSS has to get down here. Something of that nature. And I just wanted to share that.
So may I?
Ms. Zigarelli, thank you for your comments. Trustee McLaughlin, before you go, can I just ask the chief? Chief, we had been discussing, it might even be this very individual. Can you share with the stakeholders the experience that your department had with a homeless person recently, and what you went through to help this individual?
Yeah, we had a woman who was pretty much out in the street, and my police officers saw that and were interacting with her and several of them, one of my lieutenants, Lieutenant Hertel, one of my school resource officers, Lisa McCulley, and it really, it was brought to my attention. And this was probably a multi-week process to get her help. And we really had to do some arm twisting to get this woman the resources she really needed. It's kind of beyond our capacity as a small village police department, but the police officers persisted. They did what they had to do until, May helped out. They kind of did what they had to do to see if this woman was taken care of. And as a village police department, it's kind of the way we try to do things in every respect with the people that live and visit here.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that there's things that we can always improve on, but I guess my huge the piece in this puzzle that I really want to make sure that is put into here is that communication is key. And I hope that the village and the police department are really working together and are on each other's side to really, make sure that everything flows properly.
Thank you. So Chief, when we were talking, you had mentioned that there's a, I don't know if it's some sort of social services program that's available at Stony Brook Hospital, but that's the closest location that such a thing exists. And maybe part of the action plan that we should be looking at is maybe, obviously, we, the village, we can't open up a social service agency within the village. I just don't think that's realistic. But maybe trying to get the Stony Brook location to open up a similar type of program in the local hospital, and go through that way. Can you speak to that again a little bit? I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday.
Well, that was more about mental health intervention.
Right.
There is some resources in Riverhead. That's the closest, and generally we're taking people to Greenport, Stony Brook, or Hauppauge, and when you have two police officers working and they both have to leave the village, it's we'll do it, but it's very difficult for us. Pretty much stretches us pretty thin. So if we had something closer, that would be helpful for the community, helpful for us.
Right. So again, thinking about the plan and how we can improve services to residents and whatnot, maybe one of the action points in the plan would be to try to get the village to reach out to those organizations or those programs to see if they would open up a local program closer to us. Again, I don't think it's something that our police department would run. And I know a lot of the talk and a lot of the plans throughout the state, people have been talking, how do you minimize contact with an armed police officer? Maybe we want a social worker there. That might be more appropriate in a circumstance or not. In our case, again, we're not going to have a village independent Department of Social Services to help that. But if the village can reach out to try to get programs like that in the village, in our hospital, closer to us, then it might be an easier transition when we come across somebody in that woman's situation that was explained. We might be able to direct her to the resources she needs faster and easier.
Well, I think it's also a huge thing is there's a training from the Association of Mental Health and Wellness. Everybody who's out of the academy now has that training. I actually took it myself one time with police officers. It's wonderful. It covers so many topics. When it comes to de-escalating someone who's going through a situation, but it's also even their own mental, the own officer's mental health. I'm sure that there's a lot of traumatic things that officers see as well. And it was bringing them through PTSD and everything like that. So it covered many topics. And I don't really know if everybody on the force has that training, but it would be great for people who have been on the force for a really long time to also be required to have this training so that everybody has it. They're very well aware of, a new training. I just think that it's imperative for a police force for everyone to be trained on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's 4 hands up.
All right, who do we got?
Willa Bernstein is next.
Yeah, I think we need to devote some time to talking about the process of how this becomes a collaborative report that incorporates the suggestions of the different stakeholders. So now we have a draft report, which seems to summarize some of the things that are going on with the Village Police Department, but doesn't commit to specific changes. And I thought we had a breakthrough last week, and Chief Cummings was kind enough to post all of the internal orders of the police department, which allowed the stakeholders to look at them and review them and then comment on them. But I think it's important that, I wrote my commentary, but I think it's important that someone here take notes and that we come up with a document that incorporates the suggestions of all of the people on this committee. And then perhaps at the end of the day, we can take a vote to see what we want to incorporate and what the consensus is on this committee, because the point is to reach consensus and have a partnership with the police department in terms of what we present. But right now we have some very vague recommendations that are not commitments. And I don't think that rises to the level of assuring the public that we've met the goal of being transparent and having a partnership. So one of the things is body cameras. And the PBA said that there was the experiment with body cameras and it went very well, but our draft report doesn't commit to body cameras in a certain time frame, and also doesn't commit to when an officer would be required to turn on the body camera in the course of a contact with the public. And also there's a provision in the orders which allows the police department to destroy the footage from the body cameras and just write a report about why it was destroyed. But that kind of complete discretion seems to me to undermine the point of the body cameras, which, it seems well documented that has helped to de-escalate things and to protect the public's safety. So that was one area. And then another area is the disciplinary scheme. I think, the NYPD came up based on responding to a lawsuit with a set of disciplinary actions that happen if there's excessive force, and the penalties become higher if someone in the police department has recurring incidents of that type. So that, and also requiring police officers to report other officers who might engage in excessive force or other kinds of harm, there should be a requirement to report those things. I wondered if Chief Cummings would also agree to post the budget of the police department, because we can come up with any recommendations, but it's kind of in a vacuum if we don't know what the budget is. So, that's one thing, sorry. Oh, dear. So that was another thing that I was thinking it needs to be input, and can we come up with a document that incorporates these suggestions?
Ken, I don't know if you want to address that, or should I go on to the next person?
You can go on to the next person. That's fine.
Okay, so Reverend Donald Butler, you are next.
Okay. I have a few things first of all, let me just say this. This should not be an attack on the police, because I don't think that's the whole purpose behind this. It's really to bring things together. And I have to say personally, I have had the privilege of speaking to Chief Cummings, and I really appreciate the time he took out to speak with me about certain issues. I did that, and we did that pretty much because it needed to be done. And I thank him for taking that time out, along with the trustees also. I thank you for that. But my thing also is to May Zigarelli, what is DASH for one? I don't know what DASH is. I don't know, was that acronym or something? What was that? DASH?
So it's a mobile crisis unit.
Okay.
So when DSS is called, they have a mobile crisis unit that will come out and evaluate a person, depending on what the situation is.
Okay, I'm familiar with mobile crisis from when I was with the police department. They used to call us to a scene. So I'm familiar with mobile crisis. Just wasn't familiar with DASH. And then also we need to make sure that we're doing police reform, which means that this is not an attack on the police. It's just things that need to be done differently so the community and the police get along well and work properly. A police department can never work properly or effectively without the community support. The police department needs the community support, and the community needs the police to be doing their job, which I believe that's what's going on. So I don't have an issue with that. Someone else said, I think May said it again, police and government needs to work together. One of the things that, and Ken said it also, Attorney Ken Gray said it also, that there need to be some dialogue to when the police department has a need, they should be able to speak to the government officials to where they make that request to where it's needed. Because the police department can't do all of that by themselves. So it need to be where they have access and a dialogue and communication with the mayor and the village board of trustees to where they can say, this is what we need, and then they put that request in. Willa Bernstein, I agree with you about the cameras. I agree with you 100% because the cameras will be your best friend as long as you're doing the right thing. If you're not doing right, you don't want a camera. I remember saying that, I think on one of the first programs we had, that the camera would have been my best friend, because if someone would have made a false accusation against me, the camera would have shown that that's not what happened. So I agree with the cameras 100%. Evaluations, I think I read where the evaluations were done only 45, what was it, 45 days after. The chief, you could help me with this, with the evaluations. Evaluation need to be an ongoing thing. And I know it's difficult, but it needs to be an ongoing thing, so we would know what, and the chief would know what kind of police officer are we working with? How is he functioning in the street? How many complaints has he received? I mean, it can't be where nothing can be done about it. Those are things I had on my list.
So Chief, why don't you speak to that? And Joe, you're next, okay?
Okay, well, the budget is a public document. You can get it at Village Hall. Every year they approve it at a public meeting, and so there's that.
Chief, I'm fairly confident it would be on the village website as we speak.
I'm not sure, but you can definitely get a copy from the village. We're moving, the police department, without any prompting from many external forces, have been moving towards body cameras. We bought the first piece of software that we needed in 2019. I have it in my budget for the next piece that we need. The cameras that we used in 2019 are no longer, they were a Motorola camera. They don't have them anymore. We have to find another camera. We're looking at the watch guard camera because that's a Motorola product as well. In terms of destroying the video, that was a situation where, like, a police officer goes to the bathroom and forgets to shut his camera off. That's like one of those types of things. It's not a action in the street that would be destroyed. It's just one of those oops moments, and and it would only be somebody at like my level that could do that, and we'd have to document that we did it. So, there has to be a little bit of discretion there. Some of the other things we're doing here, I mean, we're moving in that direction. The PBA, there's a requirement for what's called impact negotiations. So, but I don't think we're very far apart on this in terms of the PBA. And the policy we did was just the working policy that we used for the pilot program. It would be a much more comprehensive policy if we move to the body cameras on a permanent basis. So in terms of the budget, I'm not sure what we kind of had a budget for it, but since the cameras that we were going to use are gone now, and the basic pricing structure was that you got the camera itself as part of the deal, and they gave you paid for storage. So we'd have to reprice that. But in terms of the police department, I don't think the police, like I as the chief and the PBA, I don't think really either of us are opposed. We just have to work out some of the details. The timeline, I think, is kind of just a financial thing for the village. It's a big financial commitment, and we have to see where we're at in the budget. We have a 2% tax cap, and there's only so many things we can do instantly. We kind of have to move this along over, as I said, we already bought one piece of the software, trying to buy the next piece, and, moving towards that end destination.
Thank you, Chief.
So it sounds like, this, hopefully we can get a consensus from the committee to make a recommendation to the mayor and the board of trustees in the plan to move forward with the body cam program, for lack of a better word. And as the chief points out, certain things are mandatory, negotiable, mandatory items of negotiation with the PVA. So, we could certainly, this committee can put in what our desires are as to what's contained in the policy or whatnot. But ultimately, obviously, we're going to need some negotiations on those policies. All right. Thank you. Trustee McLaughlin, I cut you off before and I apologize. Was there something you wanted to chime in on?
Yes, I just wanted to address a few of May's points. Just a few things. So as a trustee, I am the trustee, the trustee who has oversight to the police. So it's myself and the mayor. So I actually am the one who probably speaks to the chief and his lieutenants probably on a weekly basis or bi-weekly at a very minimum. Obviously, with COVID, it makes things a little more difficult. So and I actually was a part of the meeting with the Reverend Butler. So it was very productive, and I thank him for his time. And I think in reference to the individual last fall, this actually happened right as I was elected. So I actually got several calls from residents about that issue. The issue was resolved rather slowly due to the fact of the weather. As the chief alluded to, there's a little we can do if someone refuses help. They can refuse help, so that makes it harder. So just to circle back, I am the trustee who oversees, and I have a pretty good consistent relationship with the chief and his top brass, and I met with them at least bi-weekly. So I hope that going forward, post-COVID, I will have a more consistent face-to-face interaction with them. But I know that they've done a good job when it comes to these issues of mental health. And again, it was a difficult road because it was only so much we could do. So I just wanted to address those points, and I do agree that the department could certainly invest in cameras. I would certainly support that as a trustee, and I would certainly work with the department to make it happen, to come to a compromise if need be. So that's all I had to say about that.
Thank you, Joe. The next in line was Lisa Votino.
So one of the things that I wanted to say, I think there's a dash that's coming to the East End instead of it being like based where it was May. I think if it hasn't happened already, there's going to be one.
I know I worked when I was in the town of Riverhead. I was previously the deputy chief of staff. There was talk about it. I know that they were thinking about having it in Riverhead because we were in talks with the county, obviously, and with Anne Marie Sorney. I was really advocating towards that because it's the same issues that Chief Cummings is talking about, is that you have someone bringing that person all the way to Hauppauge, then you have one less officer, you have an officer down, then you like, where are you gonna bring that, where are you gonna find another officer to patrol? So I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I remember hearing that, but I haven't heard anything yet. And I could say that I am a legislative aide, and I would be on top of that in 5 seconds because I am, and I actually don't believe anybody wants to be homeless. I don't think that when someone refuses help that they're really refusing it. It's just that they don't know, they're frustrated, or you need to build that trust with them. And that's not going to be pushing them in a car either to CPEP or Hauppauge. So I completely agree with you that I was hoping that would be sooner, but I know that that's going to take probably a little bit longer, but I'll research it tomorrow for sure.
This came up in the town meeting. It was actually Minerva Perez from OLA that mentioned that. So I'll actually text her after this just to find out. And that kind of goes into like my second point on this is that we actually have a really good group of, what?
Lisa, can I just one thing, if I may?
Yeah.
I think when they have to transport somebody in that situation, I think actually they lose 2 officers for the transport. So it's very significant. Thank you, Lisa. I apologize.
No, it's okay. The second point is, and I've said this in the town as well, we have a really good group here. Granted, we're not all on tonight, but you should also consider us resources, right? So like, this isn't like a boo police thing. This is a, how can we help you thing? like I, as adversarial as I can come off, I really am not. I want everybody here to do better. That's it. That's my goal at the end of the day. Equality, equity, we're all happy and we have a good community. So that was one of the things. Another thing that was brought up was officer wellness. And I don't know what the village has in place. I do know that Sue Ralph from the town has been doing a really excellent job with that. So I'm wondering if the village doesn't have a whole lot of resources in that department, if there's any way to collaborate with the town on something like that.
Lisa, was that directed at somebody for an answer?
Yeah, Lisa, I don't know the answer to that question, but what you're speaking about, what the town has, is it like an EAP, an employee assistance program, where people can go to?
It is, but it's a lot more in depth than that. They have a lot of resources for the officers and
right. I know when people hear the word EAP, they think, okay, it's drug and alcohol related only.
No,
but it's much broader than that.
Yeah, and they have a lot of really good programs. Like when we got into the weeds of it, it was really interesting and impressive, actually. Like the different things that could be offered to an officer if they were in crisis, or maybe they're not in crisis yet, but there might be some warning signs there.
Do you know what the name of that program is by any chance?
I think it's just their officer wellness program, because they kind of pull different things from different places. I'm sure Chief Cummings has an idea of what I'm talking about. But
I'm sure, but you know, I'm recognizing
more details.
Okay. Well, recognizing you know, the issue of resources and whether or not, you know, what we might be able to allocate, and everybody from the governor down has always been encouraging intermunicipal sharing of resources and whatnot. So maybe this committee, the stakeholder committee, can, you know, we can look into it, maybe ask the chief, like you said, the chief, I'm sure, is aware of it and knows about it. And maybe we can, in the plan, encourage the mayor and the board of trustees to look into some sort of intermunicipal sharing agreement with that officer wellness program and make it available to our offices. If it's not already, it might be available already. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's why I was just kind of, when it came up, I was like, oh, let me ask.
Okay, Chief, do you have any comment about that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, there's a peer support group that we actually have a police officer from our department who participates in, and we participate in the county's EAP program, but I'm sure there's some things at the town we could also get involved in if we needed them.
Okay, so we already have something in place with the county EAP?
Yes.
Okay, and to the committee, I apologize that I don't know that off the top of my head. So okay.
And Willa has been waiting very, very patiently. So when you have a minute, she's next.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we started off talking about, you know, the idea of civilian oversight and, you know, whether we could have an individual or preferably a committee so that there was ongoing dialogue and, you know, the mandate to maybe publish periodic reports about what's going on, and also to take complaints, because, you know, the experience that Mr. Waldrop shared was obviously, you know, very upsetting and traumatic for him, but he also described the chilling effect of not feeling comfortable reporting. And the reporting system that we have is to report to the police department, going to the chief of police, you know, Chief Cummings, who makes the decision about how that complaint will be treated. So I think, you know, and then Chief Cummings had said that, you know, that question should be thrown to the village, because they were the ones initiating this inquiry. So I guess it's the trustees. And so I should ask Joe, you know, what the position is on that. And in the draft report, it was recommended the village administrator be that person, but I don't know how political that role is, or if that's, you know, subject to politics or whatever, or if it should be a board that the police participate in appointing somebody, and you know, the mayor appoints somebody, and but we have an ongoing way and place to make complaints, so that the public has that you know, reassurance that they're, you know, following that complaint, reporting out if that's necessary, et cetera. So I guess what is the thinking of the village on that point?
So I'll take that. Well, so there is no committee there is no group as of now. I would be certainly open to that. Off the top of my head, I would think maybe clergy like the Reverend or Father Mike or Father Patrick would be people who would who may be interested in being part of that group as a start for individuals who go to those places of worship. So I maybe that would be a start. And also, anyone's free to, you know, call me or even email me. As a police liaison, I do take it very seriously. So anyone has any issues between now and we develop a path forward, I'd be glad to take those emails and calls and relay them to the police.
If Ken Gray, if I may jump in, trustee. One of the issues with complaints going directly to the mayor and the board of trustees is that the way New York State village law is set up is that ultimately, if there's discipline imposed and it doesn't get resolved at the department level, the matter goes to a hearing officer, who then makes a report and recommendation, and ultimately that goes to the mayor and the board of trustees. So filing a complaint directly with the mayor of the board of trustees would cause a conflict of interest, or at the very least, an appearance of a conflict of interest. So, so when I put in that draft plan that, you know, I selected the village administrator, just because obviously she's not the mayor and she's not an elected trustee. But if in our proposed plan that we want to put forward, obviously we the committee are not going to make the ultimate decision anyway. It's going to be the mayor and the board of trustees because it's their plan. We could always put in, you know, an alternate that they should certainly consider complaints being able to be processed to an independent person to be processed.
Thank you for that correction, Ken. My apologies for not knowing that. So
no, that's quite all right.
Maybe, as I said, maybe to have maybe some clergy members in the village or whomever, you know, I'm open to having a third party group, but at the same time, I do think, you know, we have to be, you know, obviously we have to be careful as to who we choose and see, you know, what can work best for the community. So.
Thank you, Joe. And Michael Horstman, did you have something to say?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I had a question for Ms. Bernstein. What you were just mentioning about the Civilian Review Board, are you talking about something similar of what NYPD has?
Well, I think it would be different to be tailored to the needs of the village, but I just think there has to be, you know, in every police department, there should be civilian, either small group where they also get the complaint and can track it so that a member of the public can be in touch with that group as well as the police department to see what's happened to their complaint and just have the transparency about that. So it's not, so you don't have the chilling effect of having to report what you perceive, what is a real problem to the agency that you feel has victimized you. That's, not a good situation. So I don't think it has to be as large and, staffed as the Civilian Complaint Review Board or, what the city has because it's a village. But, can we have in the budget, a professional, person or people that track, the complaints and that the public can liaison with to, if they have a problem. That was my point.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to respond to that. Right now we have, 32, 33 police officers. We have that set up already. We do have a village board with a mayor and 4 trustees, and we have 2 village attorneys who would be the one who would be subject to disciplining us. So we have Mr. Gray and Mr. Toomey. So that is set up. And again, we do have 32, 33 police officers. So, those are the attorneys, those are the specialists who, would be able to do some type of disciplinary hearings, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, my only problem with that is, I'm an attorney, and when you're the village attorney, your job is really to defend the village. So this is a separate, job. It's a separate set of, professional tools that you have to have and abilities to be able to, represent the public vis-a-vis the police department and, have trust and collaboration and so on. So it should be people with criminal justice experience. But to say that it's the lawyers, because, as a government lawyer, and I worked for the Attorney General's office, I worked for the mayor's office, my job was to defend the, municipal entity. So what we're really talking about is, what do you do if you have a problem, whether it's the police department or, any agency of government that is supposed to serve the public, but, where do you go if you have a problem with them? If you had a problem with the mayor, you don't want to complain, where do you go? What watchdogs or what, maybe watchdogs is a bad term, but I don't think it's the village attorneys. So I'm just, I think that's a requirement the way I saw it from reading what the.
You just muted yourself, I think.
I think I was finished. Yeah, I don't think the village attorneys can serve that role because it's clearly a conflict of interest. And in fact, any political office is going to inherently be political, but it should be a group of people who are paid something, but who are not political, who are not an arm of the the government to provide a safeguard. You don't want to have a scheme where if you have a problem, you're only, you're going to sue. The NYPD published the disciplinary procedures based on a lawsuit, but ideally you don't get to the point of having to bring a lawsuit or whatever. You want to have some safety valves in government. So that's how I see it. It's like a safety valve, but it's not the village attorney, and it's not a political person. It's a person whose job it is to report on that and track, problems and maybe look at if there's a problem with, stops being largely of people of color. You should have somebody who looks at that and assures the public that that's not going on, or if it is, there's some way to ameliorate it or address it, or it's in a report or somebody, knows about.
Okay. You want me to do next, Ken?
Yes, please.
Can I just comment on that?
Yeah, whoever said that, yes.
Mike Horstman, how are you?
Yes, good.
Yeah, it's just a little bit, concerned from my standpoint of, that type of civilian review board to look over, police procedures or issues going on. I believe an attorney, your attorney, as you mentioned, Ms. Bernstein, if there's some alleged misconduct with a specific attorney, they go in front of a panel of approximately 10 to 14 other attorneys. Is that correct?
I don't actually know. Yeah, are you talking about like a complaint to the bar?
Correct. Yeah, somebody makes a complaint to about a specific attorney for alleged misconduct.
Yeah, the bar association would deal. The bar association would have a committee that tries that case. Yeah.
Of all attorneys, correct?
Yeah, if you're an attorney, you're a member of the bar. So if a complaint went to the bar, it would be reviewed by a committee of the bar.
Okay. Mr. Horstman, I don't want to cut you off, but again, I don't think we should be cross-examining other committee members, and Ms. Bernstein. But I think you made your points, so I don't think that dialogue is necessarily appropriate.
Shall we go with the next one? Ken, you're muted.
Sorry, who's next? Is
Lisa.
it
Lisa Votino is next.
Votino?
Yeah, and then May.
So I've long been a proponent of a CCRB type situation for all departments. I think that whether you want to call it a CCRB or you want to call it something else, I think it builds a whole lot of public trust in the system. I fully understand the PBA's point on this. I get it. The best other solution I could come up with is that maybe at some point, or maybe there is, volunteer officers or retired officers from across the country that don't have a stake in local police departments that might be willing to hear those complaints, but I still think a complaint should be taken in by an independent body. This is something I did not get in the town plan. And I'm on the record as saying the same thing. What I will say is in the People's Plan, there is excellent legislation. Literally, we could pick it up, tailor it to our needs and pass it. It's like the full legislation is in there. So I would ask that everybody, that maybe me and Mr. Horstman could also have a little bit of dialogue offline about if he'll take a look at that and just maybe give me his thoughts back on that. We still have, I know we want to believe that our 7 complaints are literally all the complaints that we have. But I know that's not the case. So, and the reason why is because we're asking the police to take a complaint about the police and police the police. And it's not a good system anywhere. And that's not aimed at the village. That's literally how I feel about that process in general. So if we're not going to do, I'm like Willa, I don't know about the village administrator. I don't know if it's a political thing, if it's like an office that people come and hang out and talk in a whole lot. Like, I don't know what that dynamic is. I know that in the town, one of the recommendations that we had and we agreed that the police agreed to was that an individual could come to one of us, meaning an advocate or a community organization, and we could make the complaint on their behalf. And then it would have to go, if the person needed to be interviewed, we would work with that person to try and make that happen. And I was involved in one of those complaints. So I can tell you that it actually kind of worked. And not only did it go to like a slight discipline level, but we also were able to find a little bit of restorative justice for that. So not everything has to be like this red flag thing. Like sometimes having a little bit of an outside perspective gives you more options in the end. So that's my my feelings on it. But I would take a look at that CCRB legislation because it's pretty solid, and it's what we're proposing to both counties as well. So
Okay,
Thank
May,
you. Kat, anybody else?
yeah, May, you're up, and then after Donald Butler's after you.
Sorry, I was lowering my hand. Two buttons there. I agree with Lisa. I mean, I don't really see that there's an issue with that proponent. I mean, I just feel like in general, if you're an advocate type group, that's what you would want to do is help individuals and, you know, that type of process. I also don't see that there's anything wrong with the village administrator as well. I have seen before disciplinary, I've in my certain previous experiences, I have been on a town side of disciplining an employee. And I would have to say that by the time it gets to that point, you have evidence and you want to make sure that the integrity of the government and everything that your administration stands for is held to a certain integrity. And I can say that in the hearings that I've been a part of, I was only just saying evidence, and I was never advocating on the side of the town or defending the town or that employee, because by the time, there's a reason why we were there. It wasn't to defend the town. It was because one of our employees did something bad and we had a hearing. So I just wanted to put that, you know, into perspective here, that I wouldn't think that the town would be defending an employee that did something bad. I just also wanted to ask the town attorney, do you guys have outside counsel when it comes to like a disciplinary hearing, or do you guys handle that? Or
No, the village has separate outside labor counsel, Vincent Toomey.
Right.
He handles contract negotiations with the unions, and he would be the one handling any disciplinary issues against any employees. But thank you for asking. And let me I just want to make this comment about defending the village. You're correct. As the village attorney, my client is the village, and I report to the mayor and to the board of trustees. And in part of that, my role is to protect the village, even from internal issues. So if we're aware of an officer who is, you know, discriminating, being discriminatory, using excessive force, we would be advising the village that they need to take corrective action. They need to take action and enforce our harassment policies, our sexual harassment policies. So being the village attorney is protecting the village, not individual employees. So as village attorney in a number of other villages, and being special labor counsel, such as Vince Toomey, I'm often in the role of, quote unquote, prosecuting disciplinary matters against employees. So again, I appreciate you pointing out that we protect the village, but part of that role is giving advice on what we should be doing to what not to sound flip, but bad apples.
Right, and a lot of people wouldn't know that. Like I'm saying, even from my experiences, I would have, you know, because I was a government employee in that position where I needed to learn very quickly when it came to employees, you know, when we had disciplinary hearings, there's a process in which you're going through. And I don't think that the public would ever know that.
Right.
So.
But then wouldn't we all agree that after 45 days of the probationary period where there's no evaluations, and that's part of the contract, that's not a good way to, you know, make sure that people on the force are all, you know, doing their, you know, the best job? Because
right.
if you give people reviews, I mean, I never worked in a government agency, and that's all I've worked for is government jobs where I didn't get a yearly review from a supervisor telling me how I was doing. But if that's the case, you know, can't that be reformed?
Ms. Bernstein, let me respond to that. So everybody may or may not know, new hires that come out of the academy and get hired by the village, they have an 18-month probationary period. So we look at them for 18 months and we're able to, release them from service if they have an unsatisfactory probationary period. The 45 days that you're talking about and was in your document refers to lateral transfers. So these are sworn officers who were in other departments, who have experience, hopefully good experience, and they've been vetted in theory that they did not have any past prior disciplinary issues in their prior employment. So they then get transferred over. That issue of the 45 days was negotiated with the PBA. So now it's in the collective bargaining agreement. It's a mandatory subject to negotiation. But this committee certainly can make a recommendation as an action plan to say, when they're negotiating the next collective bargaining agreement, that should be one of your items on your demands for the village, is to remove that 45-day restriction, for lack of a better word, and substitute in annual reviews. Again, because it's in the contract, it converts to a mandatory subject to negotiation and will have to be negotiated. But certainly within the realm of this committee to make the recommendation that they put in the demands on contract negotiations to remove it. The third category, I'm sorry, just to finish my thought. The third category concerning probation is if somebody gets promoted. If somebody gets promoted within the department, there's a 6-month probationary period for people to be reviewed. So I just want to clarify what that 45-day comment, issue was. Chief, did I say anything wrong about the contract?
No, and also if someone was subject to discipline as part of the, if there's a negotiated settlement, we can agree with the PBA that there'll be additional evaluations.
Yes, obviously, yes. That could always, what I always term as, double secret probation, so to speak. But yeah, that could always be a term in a negotiated settlement that we have going forward. So,
Okay.
Thank
Three
you.
hands are up.
All righty, who's up
Reverend
next?
Donald Butler is next, and then Michael Horstman after him.
All right, thanks again. To Village Attorney Ken Gray, you actually led me into what I'm going to say now also about corrective measures and complaints. But you said something last that really got my attention. The 45-day is only for lateral transfers, not really initial hirees. So that would be the issue also that needs to be looked at, because a lot of times the hirees are from the village or whatever, and lateral movement is not as high as those who actually live in the village. So that's what I was my thing. But the Civilian Complaint Review Board complaints ultimately ends up at the chief's office. So this is still going into where you were talking about, Attorney Gray. And then does the village mayor and the board of trustees ever see that complaint? That would be a question that I just want to just push out there, because if they see it, and then that will give a little bit more transparency that could be used as far as the community is concerned. But if they don't see it, they don't know, then only the police department knows, which goes back to what Michael Horstman said. And he was right in what he said when he said that, as well as Bernstein, it can't be good for one and not good for the other. What he was really saying was that if the police can't police the police, then why can lawyers police lawyers? So that's really, I mean, I know you don't want to get into that, but that's really what he was saying. And I kind of agree with that statement that, oh, you could do it, but we can't do it. What makes the difference? If we want to be fair, we have to be fair totally across the board. And I know that's a legal thing, and I'm not going to get into it. I just want to bring that up because I knew when he said that, even though he didn't get to it, I knew where he was going with that. Because lawyers would actually determine whether lawyers can keep their license to be lawyers. So that's really what he was getting at. And police officers, police and police, which I don't ever agree with that, because I just don't think police officers can do a proper job at doing that. And it takes nothing away from anybody. I'm really not doing that. It's just that police officers hate hurting other police officers. And what happens when you discipline them, it's money out of their pocket and families hurt. So that's another issue that you're gonna have a hard battle trying to get a police officer to hurt another police officer. Hopefully we don't look at it as hurting a police officer, we look at it as helping a police officer, and something could be done to help that police officer in training and de-escalation training, or something within the department, which means that you need a great leader. You need a good leader. You need a strong chief, which I think we have that in the village of Southampton. But you also need a transparency with the mayor and the board of trustees. And I just found out tonight that Trustee Joseph McLaughlin was over the police department, but I didn't know that. But I'm glad to see that there is someone assigned to the police department that can actually take that message back to the mayor and the board of trustees. So I think that was all I had to say on that. Yes, that was it. I'm writing down as I'm going. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have any other hands up?
Yes, Michael Horseman is next, and then Lisa Votino after him.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond back to when Lisa mentioned on her last comments. I would love to sit down and meet with you. I actually just spoke to one of my colleagues locally who's a PBA president, and maybe there's some things that we could do, discuss further in private. It's a little difficult on Zoom, to discuss this. Unfortunately, the times we're in with COVID, we have to. But I definitely, what I'll do is I'll try to email you tomorrow, which I believe I have your email that was sent to me privately with all the other stakeholders. I also just want to thank everyone for their comments. This isn't about, Mike Horseman. This isn't about Lisa. This isn't about Dave Dorchak. This is about how can we make this police department better to serve our community. This is about the residents of Southampton Village. And, obviously we're not perfect, but we're going to do everything we can to serve them to the best of our ability. Maybe Lisa, you could help us out with a few things. Our communication with the mayor's office is terrible. And that's something that, I feel is, definitely hurting this department. But again, we will continue to serve the best we can, and we will look forward to all of your input. And again, this is about the Southampton Village residents. So thank you. That's it.
Lisa?
I appreciate it. And yeah, the other local PBA president, I'm a big fan of. So I'm just letting you know, I'm not like this big band meaty. I'm able to you sit down. I'm passionate about this work. I'm passionate about the people that come to me for help, but at the same time, like, I'm a really easy person to sit down and talk to. One of the things that I know has come up from department to department, everybody seems to have a different interpretation of this. When we were talking just now about lateral transfers, do we receive the discipline records from all their former departments? Because I know for some departments that wasn't happening. They were doing the lateral transfers without receiving those discipline records. So that was one question. The other question, and this actually came up very late in the town's plan, was, are we doing like a deep dive into new hires' social media? Because that has seemed to be a very modern, contemporary issue at the moment. And certainly, I'll never be an officer because my social media is a very scary place. But I would hope somebody we give a gun and a badge to does not have the social media of me.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Reverend,
Lisa, if I don't know the answer to that question, because I'm not the Labor Council, but maybe I can try to reach out to Vince Toomey to get some answers on that question. But as you know, and I'm sure, many of the departments or village attorneys are giving the response. When you say we're looking at applicants, you obviously realize that we're constrained by New York state law, civil service law. We don't give the tests. We asked Suffolk County Civil Service for the list. And obviously there's a preferential treatment for village residents who are on the list for the new hires. But we're kind of constrained with the 1 in 3 rule, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We get a list. We can't, let's say we're going to hire 2 people. We might canvass a list of the top 10 people on the list, but we're required to pick one of the top 3 candidates. So again, maybe part of this, because we're constrained by New York state law, maybe part of the action plan is to suggest to the mayor and the board of trustees that they petition their state legislators to change that, to make it more, I don't want to say the word easy, but to give us the opportunity to do the deep dive on individuals and maybe eliminate somebody. Somebody might be a terrible person, deep down terrible person, but they're a great test taker and they get 100 on every civil service test they take. Well, we're kind of stuck. So maybe that's one of the recommendations, to petition legislators to alter the state law.
I will tell you, Ken, that's actually, both those recommendations are in the town's plan, because we acknowledged, especially with like the residency requirement, if we're talking about getting diversity in the police force, and you have to live within the village. And I know I had this conversation with Sag Harbor. So, and it's the same thing with Southampton Village. If we want to increase diversity, right? People have to live in the village. Well, if people don't live in the village, then we're going to have the same police force over and over again. So there are several things in the town's plan that it says, we want to advocate in Albany for some of these changes. So if and no one has seen the town plan, it's really long, but there is a kind of an executive summary towards the back before the appendixes or the appendices. And it lists out like 21 recommendations that we're making. And those all came out of, the stakeholders, the executive branch and the police department. So, so it's not just we acknowledge that sometimes it's the county or the state that's actually like holding us down in some of the things that we want. So yeah, I would definitely make some of those recommendations of advocacy on a different level too.
Okay, great, thank you. And maybe you and Mike can talk offline and come up with some recommendations for language to be added to the proposed plan, so that everybody can have an opportunity to take a look at that. I apologize, I didn't have an opportunity to look at your what you had submitted a little bit before the meeting today. So any other hands up?
Reverend Donald Butler is next.
Thank you again. And I'm responding to Attorney Gray again. The 1 in 3 is absolutely the law of the land. But my thing is, and Lisa spoke about it, the residency requirement. With the resident requirement, don't they have priority over the 1 in 3? So, well, I know in the village of Hempstead, what would happen was that you could not hire the 1 in 3 until you hired the village residents first. That's the requirement. You had to hire village residents first, and that was based on 1 in 3 also. And then after that, you can go outside of the village of Hempstead. So that's all I know about that. So I'm not a lawyer, but that's how I remember it being, that village residents had first grabs at the position. Secondly, going back to my previous question was the chain of command for discipline. And I want this for clarity, because coming from the police department, that's one thing I like about it, because I understand a little bit about that chain of command. Coming from the police department, everything that we did that was a discipline action did end up in the chief's office, but it also ended up in the mayor's hand. Is that what happens here, or does it just does just the trustee get it? He decides whether it goes to the mayor, or he decides what happens with it? Because we also had a trustee that was over the police department, also was, you know, every trustee had an assignment to DPW, the police department, or whatever. So my question is, what happens when the chief makes his decision? Does the mayor ultimately get that decision, or does it get lost before it gets to the mayor? Because in reality, everything ultimately, and I'm not saying it because I see his face on here now, but everything ultimately falls on the mayor as the chief executive officer of the village of Southampton. So I just want to know, how does that work? And we have Trustee McLaughlin on here. Have you received any complaints that's going to the mayor? Or I don't understand the chain. I just want to be able to understand the chain of command. I don't know.
Yeah, Chief, if you want to elaborate.
Mayor Warren would like to speak.
Can I just, Reverend, if I may just paraphrase your question for a second, and just to boil it down. If there is discipline internally in the police department that gets settled on the command level or the chief's level, does that information get reported back to the mayor and board of trustees?
Yes, no matter what the infraction is, right. if the chief had the discipline either by verbal or some other way, does the mayor have knowledge of that? And the board of trustees, I'm sorry.
Chief, I don't know if you're in a position to answer that question.
If it's like just a verbal reprimand, there's a potential that it wouldn't. If it's written, a written agreement, and Mr. Toomey would be part of that, and he would report if I didn't to the village board. And then, like in an informal discipline, basically we would do an investigation. Mr. Toomey would be involved in the investigation, make sure we were doing best practices and we're in line with, you know, appropriate law and procedures. And if we recommended charges, the village board would have to approve the service of the charges, although I'm the one that would prefer the charges. And then the village board would approve a hearing officer, and then there would be a hearing. And the hearing officer would recommend whatever the discipline was going to be on the village law to the village board and the mayor, and they would have to vote to execute that discipline.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Reverend Buller, I heard the question. So while I'm not one of the elected officials chosen to be part of this stakeholder group, the questions and some of the comments were directed at me. So I did want to do my part and contribute. I think the chief, if you don't mind elaborating a little more about that, it's a great question. You know, to what extent, and this is just very helpful for not just the stakeholders to know, but those, you know, who are watching. We can use a little civics lessons here if you don't mind. But to what extent, when you do get a complaint, do I as mayor get that information, or to what extent does Trustee McLaughlin as a liaison to the department get that information? And how often does that happen?
Well, most of the discipline, not discipline, the correction, I would say would be a better word for it. It occurs, happens at the sergeants making sure the police officers are doing things correctly. They see their deficiency, they're going to correct the deficiency, but that's not necessarily. The police department is more than, you know, there's positive discipline and there's negative discipline. Positive discipline is correcting somebody's behavior you think is, so, you know, not ideal. And then there's infractions of the rules that really do require some punitive action. And any of those punitive things would likely go to you if it wasn't something that was really minor, that we just like maybe a guy was late for work for 10 minutes and the sergeant's like, hey, you can't be late for work. You know, if it's something significant, you're definitely going to know about it.
And Trustee McLaughlin, have you been, you know, made aware of anything just as the liaison? Typically, after all, we do a really good job communicating with our residents. We're on the phone all day long. It's one of the things, it's one of the reasons, you know, and ways we try to provide good customer service to our residents. So when something happens, we typically know about it. So we get a lot of our information mostly from the residents who are calling us. We get a lot of phone calls every day. Most recently, we reached out to every single senior in the village to help them get a vaccine. So we are on the phone all day long. We know our residents. And so typically we get the information from the residents. But maybe trustee liaison, if you have any other source of information, you can share that with us. And then the only thing I would add is you know, I heard that, you know, head of our PBA here, you know, mentioned that there is room for improvement with the PBA. And I would say we aim to please. That's our goal. And so we would love to invite you to as many meetings as possible. We'd love to meet once a week. You know, even we can start this Friday. We had a great meeting last week, and the better the communication channels, the better we are. We're only a better village for it. So would love to meet, you know, and get together on a regular basis. It could be every Friday if you're open to it, but just wanted to put that out there. You know, when I speak to the residents, our residents want to see us working together, and that's what we want to do here. And we'd love to obviously work with both the union and very closely with the department, which we strive to do. But I just wanted to mention, and so hopefully we can get together this Friday and every Friday thereafter that. Now, Trustee McLaughlin, maybe you can kind of just let us know about the communication that you get, just to answer Reverend Butler's question.
In my 6 months in office, I have yet to be informed of any disciplinary action by the police. So not as of yet. So I guess that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, well, I don't know the answer to the question, but it's quite possible that there have been no disciplinary issues in the last 6 months. So that's why it was not reported to you.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, family.
Chief?
Nothing that rose to the level that didn't get handled by a sergeant. Like one of those simple things, like I said, like someone late for work, or, you know, maybe paperwork didn't get handed in early as necessary. Nothing that required punitive discipline, just correction.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my question was pretty much not for micromanaging. That was not the purpose of that. It was just that ultimately the chief is, ultimately the mayor is going to have to answer to the people who elected him why certain things didn't get taken care of, and it would be a bad thing if he just didn't have the information. That's the whole thing I'm saying. But when it comes down to discipline, that it needs to go up the chain, and I do agree with the chief on this, that everything shouldn't be in the mayor's office. Again, you know, he didn't have his hat on, or, you know, something like that. I mean, I don't, you know, I know what he's talking about. I've been there, so I know what he's talking about there. So, and again, that's another issue with the cameras. You know, the chief brought that up in one other meeting, that they didn't want the camera to be used for disciplinary action because the guy maybe didn't have his tie on. You know, little stuff like that. That's the PBA's issue, and I understand that also. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about stuff that affects the community. Right? That's what I'm talking about. All that internal stuff, the chief can handle that. I'm talking about that stuff that affects the community and the people that the stakeholders serve and are looking out for.
Thank you, Reverend. So maybe one of the recommendations that might end up in this plan is discipline that gets imposed that had not made it to the board level because it was resolved internally at the command level. Maybe a monthly report to the mayor and board of trustees on any discipline imposed. So if somebody got a 5-day rip for whatever the case may be, that would end up in a report, a monthly report to the trustee liaison, who can then report it to the board. One thing that everybody on this committee knows, I'm sure, absolutely, is that complaints and discipline against police officers has always been protected by civil rights law, which was repealed, New York State Civil Rights Law, Section 50A, off the top of my head, was repealed. So So yeah, I mean, so this is data and information that the police department actually keeps track of. They put discipline in police officers folder, for lack of a better word, whatever you want to call it. But maybe that's one of the things that we insert into this action plan, is that even if it was not discipline that had to rise to the level of getting mayoral and board of trustees approval to move forward on the charges, if it got settled down below, there should be a reporting incident, maybe on a monthly basis. But what I'm hearing is, for the last 6 months, there has not been anything that really led to that level. But that's something we can certainly put in a plan, in an action plan, for purposes of transparency and so everybody knows. Reverend, you have another comment?
Yes, because I'm listening to this, and my question is, in the last 6 months, have there been any civilian complaints? The chief nodded yes. So my with the repeal of 50A, that information will later on be exposed if a person needs to get that information. But my thing is that, okay, does the mayor know anybody? Does McLaughlin know anything about any civilian complaints, or were the civilian complaints not risen to the level of disciplinary actions?
Yeah, we had one related to a traffic stop that was unsubstantiated. And we had another one about a particular incident that we had already investigated, and it was, the officer was counseled. He did a good job, but he made a mistake, so he was counseled on his mistake, which is the verbal reprimand.
And it was only 2 in the last 6 months. Okay. I see, and listen, I heard of one. That's why I even asked the question. I heard of one that was stopped, and that's all I heard of, and I don't remember the incident, so I can't really get into it. But one person, I think it was someone with the NAACP, that was stopped by the Village of Southampton Police, and there was an incident with that, and I don't want to get into it because I don't have the details, and the person, I don't want to get into that. So, but I asked that question because I don't want anybody to think that the police does not receive complaints, or that what was just stated was like nothing happened over the last 6 months. And there's people sitting there saying, yes, it did, because I'll get text messages right now where people are saying, that's not true, So I'm just letting you know that, I'm listening from both ears. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Reverend, I like that. I try to hold by that same mantra, listening with 2 ears. And I can tell you that as an elected official, and relatively new elected official, we are under intense scrutiny and accountability to and from our residents, and that's critical with being a decent elected official. But at the same time, we also want to know everything that's going on, and it would be helpful when there's increased and better communication. But that's more of a conversation that we should have, with the chief. We shouldn't have to have a stakeholder group in order to get the communication that we need. We shouldn't have to find out about communication from the press or from 27 East. We should get it, as Trustee McLaughlin said, he was unaware of anything going on. We're aware of what's going on. Again, we talk to the residents all the time. That's our job. So we really are on the phones all day long, and it's our job to look out for our employees, and it's our job to look out for the residents. We serve them. We're in the customer service business, but again, we could talk about that some more. But I think that maybe takes away from the stakeholder group here, and would love to continue to hear from our stakeholders. Again, I just heard my name mentioned. I'm observing. I enjoy these meetings and would like to be a part of it. It's not an open meetings law violation because one of our trustees is absent today, so I'm happy to jump in. But again, I can stand by for any questions about my experience or village law. But again, love the input that we're getting from our stakeholders here.
And just so you know, Mayor Warren, it was spoken of earlier about communication to the government officials, elected government officials. So that was actually mentioned earlier in our conversation, not just now, but it was mentioned earlier as well.
All right, Kat, let me ask you this question. I haven't asked it in a while. Is there anybody else outside of the stakeholders committee that's in the waiting room that is
No,
looking to
sir.
be entered?
No,
Okay.
nobody.
I just
do
figured I'd
have
give it a shot.
I do have 2 hands up though. So
Okay.
Lisa, you were first waiting patiently, and then Willa is behind you.
Yeah, so I'm with Reverend Butler. I'm very aware of, like, you know, the body cams are not being used for disciplinary actions. And we've kind of, a lot of the body cam stuff, it has to do with the policy that you come up with to go along with those body cams. And that comes from all different sides of it. But one of the things that I put in the chat, and I thought Kat was going to yell at me, so I'm going to ask it. For the complaint process, is it possible for us to get like a flow chart of kind of how it goes? Like, I understand putting like a verbal warning on a flow chart isn't like a thing, but maybe just to give us a little bit. The complaint process is always, it differs sometimes slightly and sometimes greatly from department to department. And it helps us out in the community if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I need to make a complaint. I had this, or not even I have to make a complaint. I had this experience with an officer. I don't know what to do. It helps us if I can pick up the phone and say, hey, Chief Cummings, I have this individual. But it helps us in the community if we can let them know what that process is going to look like. And it's something I've requested from every department. The other thing that I would just suggest is that if it's a civilian complaint, I would always document that in the officer's file, even if it's unsubstantiated or the witness stops cooperating. And I would always give that report to the board, because we're in such a small village, and, you know, it can be like a game of telephone at times. So I would say, just from all perspectives, it's probably good practice to do that. And the other thing I was going to ask is, obviously there's a lawsuit with 50A. It's gone on appeal, and different departments are deciding to, you know, fight it legally on their own. But when that is actually, when I think inevitably those records are going to have to be released, do we have that compiled somewhere already? Or is it something that you guys are going to have to kind of scramble for? Because no, okay. I see you nodding and shaking, so good.
Okay, Kat, we have anybody else?
Yes, Willa Bernstein.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to just add my, you know, I had brief experience doing oversight in the police department and looking at civilian complaints all day long. I guess I would say that, you know, the standard of substantiated or unsubstantiated, which are the two ways that cases could go, you know, and in all my time of doing that, I saw, you know, maybe 2 cases that were substantiated because if it was a he said situation, the complainant being one of the people testifying and a police officer being the other person testifying, inevitably it came out unsubstantiated. So, and, you know, I worked with brilliant, you know, very public service oriented, wonderful people, you know, who were in IAB, but they were always the people who were only in the police department for 2 years. And so it was a pretty unpopular job. So that was the framework of things, and it never came out, or rarely came out, substantiated. So I think that having the outside oversight, which has been established, you know, since the Mullen Commission, that it needs, that has to do also with the process and just you know, having another, you know, other set of eyes on it with a different perspective. And that's my own experience of looking at reports and how they came out, because you have to be able, as just a civilian, you know, a resident, to feel like if you make a complaint, you know, you have to feel secure about how it's handled. Like, to me, that's a hallmark of feeling good about, you know, how law enforcement is meted out. Lawyers, discipline notwithstanding, luckily I haven't had to deal with that. So I don't know much about that, and maybe that could use a ton of reform. You know, I'm totally open to hearing about that and being put on a committee, or, you know, hopefully not on the other side of that. But that's my 2 cents about my own experience looking at complaints.
Okay, thank you. Kat, do we have anybody else?
No hands are up right now.
All right. Any other committee member want to share or speak on any other topic that we haven't touched upon? Okay, so looking at the schedule, it looks like we currently only have one more stakeholders meeting scheduled for March 10th. If the committee wants to, you know, add any meetings between now and March 23rd, we can certainly do that. They don't have to be the public listening sessions, because obviously for the 3 that we've had, we haven't had any residents chime in, but we can certainly have working sessions among ourselves. And based on the conversation between Lisa and Michael Hortzman, and I apologize if I miss, one, again, I haven't seen Lisa's comments, but if Lisa and Michael want to get together offline and maybe submit something into the Dropbox that you would like to see incorporated into a draft plan, we can certainly circulate another draft, a revised draft that hopefully incorporates a lot of things that was said here tonight. But again, we only have one more group meeting set, and that's for March 10th. So is the board's consensus to add another stakeholders meeting?
Most definitely. If not 2. I mean, we really, if we have one for, and I just want to be clear, I don't know if me and Michael are going to come to much of a whole agreement. But I think, again, communication is always a good thing. And I think, you know, we would have a better idea of where each other were coming from. But I do think we need probably 2 more, and I hate to do that to everybody. But I'm just thinking we probably have some hashing out of some of these recommendations. I will say my document mostly references parts of the People's Plan and parts of the Town of Southampton plan. So I kind of just put page numbers on there, so you guys didn't have to read the whole entire thing. And if you go to, if you wanted more visuals of some of those things, if you go to life.org, I'll put it in, I'll send you guys an email with it, but there are 1-pagers for each of those sections. So I just wanted to let you know, when you go to look at the document that I put in the Dropbox earlier, I just reference page numbers, just so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel or anything, because we are on such a time crunch.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend March 15th for one of those dates. So that would give us the 10th, the 15th. And then it has to go in front of the board on the 23rd. So let me ask you this, is earlier than 6, I don't know everybody's personal schedule, but is earlier than 6 o'clock okay? If we did something like at like a 2 o'clock in the afternoon type of thing, is that?
Ken, I can't do 2 o'clock because I have another job.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, you're gonna have to resign.
Tell New York State DOT that.
Yeah, about myself, I work at the school, so I can't earlier either.
Okay, I
Afternoon,
just
Yeah.
figured I'd put it out there. So we have the 10th. I mean, does it make sense to have a meeting back to back, like the 10th and the 9th and the 10th? Or is that, it doesn't make sense to have a meeting 2 days in a row?
I'm not part of your group, but it doesn't matter to me.
Thank you, Kat.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have a suggestion? I'm all ears.
That would be best for me.
Both ears are open.
I'm not available on the 15th, so
Oh,
that week I'm on vacation. And I would normally do it anyway, but I have commitments, so I won't be able to do it.
So maybe next week, can we try to have 2 meetings? Like, I hate to do like Wednesday and Friday, but
Oh. Let's see. It's the 10th.
or I'm the only night I'm not open is Monday nights.
So we're gonna scratch Monday the 15th, Ken?
well, let me ask you this. Do you think maybe, I'm in April, hold on a second. Do you think we should have a last meet on the 22nd? I mean, the board is meeting on the 23rd.
Well,
And that's when they need to.
ARB on the 22nd that I do.
Oh.
Sorry.
It's okay.
And Lisa's not available on Mondays.
Right.
It's my date night also, Lisa.
Fred would kill me. Those are our life of meeting nights.
That's my date night. You know?
My date night with other police accountability advocates.
I mean, do you want to do March 9th, Tuesday night, and then do back to back the 9th and the 10th?
I'm fine with that.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Is everybody available?
That's fine.
Well, who knows? We only have half of the committee now anyway.
Fine with me.
But Ken, what are we doing about having a working document that incorporates any of the suggestions or ideas that were, that are evolving in these conversations?
Well, again, as I said the last time, more than happy if stakeholders put pen to paper and make suggestions, and we can cut and paste them and put them in a document. Some of the things that we talked about tonight, I was going to modify the draft plan that I put out on Friday and put them out there. Happy to hear comments, suggested changes, additional information that I may have forgotten. I think what's important is what I'll call the action plan part of the document, which is towards the tail end of the document, as to things that we would like to see the mayor and the board of trustees implement. Ultimately, this is their document. Ultimately, this is their plan. But if people want to forward to me, drop them in the Dropbox. Ken, you forgot to talk about social service issues, or you forgot to talk about having an agenda to petition the state legislature to change civil service law. If I forget whatever the case may be, forward it to me. I can always cut and paste it, put it in the draft document, and redrop a draft into the plan. So that's how I see it going forward. If that's, and honestly, I don't even know at this point. Again, I'm just the facilitator of the meeting. The co-chairs are the two trustees. The mayor had requested Mr. Butler, Reverend Butler, to chair the meeting, to chair the committee. So I don't want to step on anybody's toes. So if the chairman, if Reverend Butler is the new chairman and he wants to facilitate putting the document together, that's fine too. Again, it's not my committee. It's not my plan.
Is it, I don't know everybody's comfort area with a Google Doc, but
I don't even know what that means.
okay, then that answers that. No, I've got lots of heads shaking at me.
Okay. The sad news is I actually have a bachelor's degree in computer science, but that was from 1990.
Yeah, so like
Everything
Oregon
is
Trail
changed.
days. Yeah.
I got nothing on tech. I got nothing. I actually had to call Miranda to ask her how I can get into the Dropbox because I was clueless.
Same here. I didn't call anybody, but I just figured it out.
Well, you're a better man than I, Reverend. Okay, so we're looking at March 9th and then March 10th, back to back.
Mhm.
Between now and then, I will revise what I put out as a draft plan to try to incorporate what we talked about. If I forgot something, don't be offended, please. You know, just, again, this is not my plan, this is not my committee. Jump in. But I think we need to put together something, obviously, that this committee is comfortable with, and also something that's realistic that we believe the mayor and the board of trustees will accept. Because quite honestly, you know, we put together a plan, even if we propose the people's plan, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, I have no opinion on that. It turns out to be the mayor and the board of trustees plan, so they can modify whatever we recommend and give to them. They don't need to adopt. It's their decision. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. So, okay, so we got the 9th, the 10th, and that's it as of now. So you think that'll be good? If I get a working document to everybody before the 9th, then we can talk about, and we can review Lisa's submission, which I haven't looked at yet, and then we can try to put something together.
Yep.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions or modification, like I don't even understand what this means, Lisa, just let me know offline. And I'll also offer this, that I know the people's plan, everybody thinks it's this really lofty thing, but there's some really good common sense stuff in there. And if we want one of the experts to come in and just kind of clarify or walk us through anything, they've made themselves very available. So say there's a topic that, you know, none of us really have great expertise in, there's other people we can kind of ask questions to.
All right, terrific. Any other member of the committee have a comment or concern that they want to discuss?
6 o'clock at night for those meetings?
Yes, I think that was the
General consensus, yes, I believe I'm going to put them out for 6 o'clock unless somebody wants to change that time and everybody agrees.
no, I think we're good for 6 o'clock. That's great. And I want, whoops, Isabella, did you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry. I saw your hand, sorry. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And although this was scheduled as a listening session, I think it worked out well that we were all able to listen to each other.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, no residents chimed in, but I think it was a successful listening session amongst ourselves, as the mayor had indicated he thought he would be a great idea. So, all right, with that said, I think we're adjourned, and we'll see you all back on March 9th.
Okay.
Again, please feel free, anybody, drop something into the that Dropbox, and everybody please log in, take a look at the documents that are getting circulated.